I'm back. Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast, website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things official draft FPL. My name is Mitch. I'm your host for another Gameweek preview, going over waiver options, hidden gems, and some general Premier League chat ahead of Gameweek 15. Now, at this precise moment that I'm recording, it is 10 to 10 on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. So Gameweek 14 is still very much underway. I've currently got the Liverpool-Sunderland game on just out of sight here. I've been watching that. And Leeds have just gone 3-1 up at home to Chelsea. When I saw that Leeds lineup, I thought, well, I think I said it in the last episode, I'd be surprised. I said I'd be surprised if they went for that 5-3-2 setup again. I just didn't think it would really work particularly well in the long run. But what do I know? Because they've just gone 3-1 up playing that system at home to Chelsea. Whether that actually works in the long run, I'm still not convinced. And it could actually be that getting a good result here is going to give them a sense that is the way to play. I say maybe it is, but I'm not really sure that was how that is how Daniel Farke really wants to set up. But I suppose if it's successful, hasn't really got a choice. And Sunderland, meanwhile, 1-0 up away at Anfield, just about a quarter of an hour left to go in that game. What an incredible result that would be to continue Sunderland's fine season and pile a hell of a lot more pressure on Slot. But seemingly there is still just about enough credit in the bank for him. So obviously the reason that I'm recording this episode whilst the games are still going on, and we've obviously still got a game tomorrow night between United and West Ham, is because of the tight turnaround. So it's Wednesday night at the moment. We've still got a game tomorrow night, Thursday, and the waivers will process first thing 11 o'clock, usual time, 11 o'clock on Friday morning ahead of a normal weekend contingent of football. Going through to Monday night. After that, we have a couple of conventional week-long gaps between fixtures and more business as usual before we hit the real busy time at Christmas time. So I'm really going to rattle through this. I will have plenty of time, I'm hoping, at points tomorrow and certainly first thing Friday before the waivers process to respond to questions. So I suspect this is going to be a little lighter on the content and a bit more heavier on the chat in the comments and things below, because I think, that's just how it's going to have to be for this one. So without further ado, let's get into it. So very quick look at Waiver Watch. The players coming in were Xerxes. There's the Man United tax in full flow. As soon as a United player becomes on the menu, they can't help themselves. His roster percentage has gone up to 50% owned in top 208 team leagues. That is ridiculous. I'll be eating those words tomorrow when he goes to scores a hat-trick against West Ham. Teal for Newcastle, people chasing the form there. Dewsbury, Hall, Williams and Mosquera, who we'll talk about in just a few moments' time. The players making way, quite a few Brentford players on there due to the fact that they were about to play Arsenal. Obviously fell to a 2-0 defeat earlier this evening. So Vandenberg, Coyote, Collins, Sharda all out. Sarr dropped as well. I was amongst those people that had to drop Ismaila Sarr in this last waiver window just because of his injury and the fact that rolls straight into AFCON. And then a couple of the Villa defenders were out, which again would have proved to have been a good move. They did win this evening against Brighton, but they also conceded 3 goals in the process, and they host Arsenal at the weekend. So, managers rightly jumping ship there. In terms of key injuries and suspensions, some of these could well be happening as I'm recording this. But as it stands, we lost Michael Keane to some unknown injury. It doesn't sound too bad. He could be back at this weekend or the week after. Mosquera went off injured in the game earlier this evening for Arsenal with some sort of ankle injury, which we'll see whether that rules him out for the weekend, which obviously puts them in a bit of a bind because they're going to be without him, Gabriel and Saliba potentially. We're still waiting on proper news on what's going on with him. So we saw Ben White started at right back. Timber then came on and Ben White shifted over to centre back, which could be what they have to do at the weekend. Joel Gomez hit his 5th yellow card earlier on in the Wolves game. I doubt that is going to bother many of you. And we also saw, which I haven't put on the slide, right at the beginning of the Villa and Brighton fixture, that Martinez got injured in the warm-up, so Bezo played as the goalkeeper. Again, I'm not really sure what the nature of that injury is. One will have to keep an ear out in the press conferences for. So just to be aware if you're planning on starting Martinez. And whilst talking about boring injuries, Florian Wirtz has just smashed in an equaliser for Liverpool to repay anyone that's somehow clung on to Wirtz all of this time. It looked a nicer goal. Actually, took a bit of a deflection, which ruins it a little bit. But he just needs to get some attacking returns under his belt, however they come. So good for him. In terms of the fixtures for the weekend, we've got Villa Arsenal is the lunchtime kickoff, which we've just seen Watkins find a little bit of form. He scored a brace earlier on, and Arsenal potentially with quite a patchwork defensive setup. So it could be a tough test for Arsenal. Bournemouth against Chelsea. Bournemouth really in terrible form. I think they've lost 4 out of the last 5 Premier League games now, and really deflating home defeat 1-0 against Everton yesterday. So it's difficult. Aside from the obvious ones, like Semenyo, all of the non-essential Bournemouth players, I think, probably are a drop now. Their fixtures aren't too clever looking over the next few weeks. Chelsea got their issues of their own, so they're currently losing to Leeds. But I would be firmly fancying Chelsea to win that fixture. Then we've got Everton and Forest. That should be a fairly even game. I'd struggle to call that one. City against Sunderland. I mean, don't bet against that. I mean, that's a game where, if you've got Mukiele, Hume, any of the Sunderland defenders, really, it's not the worst fixture to have them in. I mean, they could easily score and could easily get some defensive contributions too. So if you're in a bit of a bind and you're not convinced you want to drop your Sunderland assets, it's not an absolute must. So they follow that up with a home game against Newcastle, which is their big derby game, and then a trip to Brighton and a home game against Leeds. So not a bad little trio of fixtures through to sort of before New Year. So I've got Mukiele myself, and I'm certainly not dropping him out my squad. We'll wait and see whether he actually gets into my starting 11. But I would not be totally gutted if he did end up in there. Newcastle Burnley, I think Newcastle will win that one comfortably. Spurs Brentford, who the hell knows? I'm not advocating for any Spurs players at the moment, and I wouldn't particularly advocate for bringing in Romero trying to chase that form, because he's just as likely to concede a couple and get a yellow card in that fixture than he is to score again. Leeds Liverpool, which again, based on how they're coming out of these evening fixtures as it stands right this second, could prove to be a tougher test for Liverpool than it should obviously seem. We saw Salah get dropped from the starting lineup early this evening, and I would firmly expect him to play that game. And that's the kind of game where, in seasons past, Salah would absolutely fill his boots in this one. He's obviously not got a huge amount of game weeks left now before he goes away to the African Cup of Nations. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about Mo Salah in the comments. No doubt a lot of you will be panicking a little bit. I would bet very good money he starts that game. Say the form is its own problem. The fact he's about to disappear for a month, we've known was coming from the start. I know that there will be lots of trade discussions about Salah, and it's incredibly difficult. If you are sitting on Salah, you are basically selling him at rock bottom price. So it's really hard to know who to advocate for even trying to swap him out for. And some of the offers that you might get could prove to be pretty disappointing. So do not sell yourself short. I still think there's good value there. He could come back from the African Cup of Nations absolutely rejuvenated and back into some form again. So, don't sell him too cheap. And for the sake of whatever it's going to be that he misses 5 or 6 game weeks potentially, do not be afraid to just park him on the bench and do the sensible thing. On Sunday, Brighton West Ham, I would fill your boots with any Brighton assets that you can get a hold of. Fulham Palace, I think, should be a good one. And then Wolves United, again, I would be trying to get as many Man United players in your team as you can. Cunha, I'm expecting, will probably be back fit by then. It sounds like he could make the bench tomorrow. Obviously, I don't have that info at the moment because I haven't got a crystal ball. I think if Cunha does feature in any degree tomorrow, given that they've also got a few extra days turnaround before Monday, I expect we might see Cunha start up top instead of Xerxes. In terms of some main picks, I haven't got many on here. I've made this as skinny as I can. Pope is going to miss a few game weeks, so Ramsdale becomes quite a nice, obvious one to target. And some of you may be looking for a bit of a goalkeeper swap out yourselves. I'm trying to think of an obvious example off the top of my head. Perhaps if you had someone like Petrovic for Bournemouth, he's been pretty underwhelming. You may just fancy swapping out for a few weeks to get Ramsdale in there. But yeah, a decent option with Newcastle's upcoming fixtures. Into the main pick defenders, and I think Van Hecker is going to be a really popular pickup in the waivers. It's already 50. He's already on 54% rostered. I expect that to go up to possibly pushing 80% by the time the game week deadline rolls around. Obviously, a home game against West Ham is nice. Clean sheet the week before. 2 goals means he got 12 points. Interestingly, he was absolutely nowhere near the bonus points, presumably because he didn't get any defensive contribution points, and conceded 4 goals for a -2. So, yeah, pretty remarkable game week for him. And a season where we seem to be getting defenders scoring a brace virtually every week at the moment. For Arsenal, if you do fancy them to sort of hold firm and get a clean sheet at the weekend away at Villa, then Hincapie's got a little bit of availability, and given the injury stacking up, he's pretty much guaranteed to start that one. In midfield, Garnacho didn't start this evening, so I think he's a pretty high chance of starting at the weekend away at Bournemouth. And say Bournemouth defensively not looking brilliant at the moment. Jeremy for Palace, I think, will have to continue playing. Don't believe he did much earlier this evening, though that's probably the game I've sort of caught the least from. Obviously, that result finished 1-0 and he didn't have any attacking returns, so I don't actually know how he looked, what the performance was like, but I still think he's going to prove popular enough. And with that fixture away to Fulham, it's a good fixture on paper for your attacking players. Gordon came and got his first goal of the season, basically given a charity penalty. Newcastle given a charity penalty for starters, and then the Newcastle players gave Gordon the penalty to take as a bit of a charity case as well, which obviously tucked away well. I think given the way the fixtures are going, there's a pretty good chance he starts that fixture, which at home to Burnley is a nice one to get if you can. And then Dango Ouattara, reasonable ownership. I think Brentford have got pretty excellent chance of at least scoring against Spurs. Lord knows what the result will be. The reassuring thing from this evening was that Brentford, probably unsurprisingly, lined up in a back three or a back five. So they played a 5-3-2, which so far this season, when that's happened, we've seen Dango become the casualty from the starting 11, and Sharda and Igor Thiago play as a sort of two-pronged attack. This evening, now I know there was some rumour about Igor Thiago maybe having a bit of an injury knock, so that's probably why. But we saw Dango and Sharda line up as the two, so it's not a total guaranteed that he doesn't play if they line up with a slightly different formation. And then in attack, there's that two-pronged Leeds front line of Nemetcha and Calvert-Lewin, which, if the result goes the way it seems to be going, I mean, we're currently into added time and they're still winning 3-1. I would be shocked if they don't line up with a near identical starting 11 for that match against Liverpool and just try and make it really, really difficult for them. So either of them, I think, become realistic pickups depending on your striker situation and your league size. In terms of hidden gems, Yoro's a nice, comfortable, fairly safe United defender to pick up for that game away at Wolves. Sounds like Maguire isn't quite ready. Obviously, if we see Maguire appear tomorrow, then it just puts a little dent in Yoro's chances of starting that game too, because we have seen a fair bit of rotation between the two. So if Maguire was then able to start the Wolves game, he might. Dunk is another easier way into the Brighton defence for that West Ham game. And Ben White, as we've mentioned, very low ownership, just 5% in engaged 8-team leagues, if you do want a piece of the Arsenal defence either way for that Villa game. And a couple of midfielders. Viffa, I'm a fan of. It seems to be a flavour of each season, doesn't it? You've had the Dango season, and this is potentially the Wiffa season. He's just fitting that bill perfectly. As an absolute defensive contribution monster, plus the occasional attacking return. He got an assist earlier this evening. Another 15 DEFCONs in the bank for his bonus 2 points, which, as I said, he basically gets every single week. Nice advanced positioning despite lining up as a right back. On set pieces as well. pretty much guaranteed 90-minute man every single week at the moment. So we haven't seen him rotate this week. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm gutted someone else in my main draft league picked him up the week before last, because I'd love to have him in my own draft team. And then the other one who's put up one of the performances of the game week in a quite bizarre fixture, which you've no doubt seen the highlights from, was that Fulham City game, which finished 5-4 to City in the end. And the player who was trying to drag Fulham to a result by the scruff of their neck was Chukwueze, who came on as, I think he came on at half-time substitute for one of the central midfielders. I think it was Lukic that came off. And yeah, just looked absolutely on fire. Obviously took the 2 goals really well, had sort of a couple of half chances as well to maybe complete a hat-trick and complete the entire comeback. Fulham obviously 5-1 down at one point. So to get it to a point where, there was a goal that was basic goal line clearance at the end from Vardy. I can't remember who exactly that was from. I think it was Josh King. But yeah, cracking game. And the kind of performance where, especially given how few fixtures Fulham have, they don't have any European football to contend with. I think that performance pretty much played himself into the starting 11. He has to play. And I suspect that will be at the expense of Harry Wilson in the medium to long term, but we'll have to see how that performance has been rewarded at the weekend when we see the starting 11. Fantastic fours. It was a pretty crap week. The only hit was Viffa, the main man. I mean, this just could just become the Viffa section. So far, I mean, we've got 44 picks there, so I've done that for 11 game weeks, hitting 16 out of 44. So it's about, what's that? Just better than 1 in 3 with an average of 3.5 points. I think we might put this experiment to bed for now. Kind of proven how difficult it is to just pull 4-pointers out of our arse every week. And, just reflects, I think, the episode I did a month or 2 ago now, looking at those players who just have such a high baseline. And I think in a way, this exercise has proven that those players have pretty good value, the ones that are able to knock out those points, the likes of Biffa, because it is incredibly hard to hit that baseline and hit the kind of pass score week to week. So I'm gonna, I think, retire the Fantastic Four section for the time being, and we'll see what else I can conjure up to take its place. But obviously, it's pushing towards midweek with the game week still going on. I don't think I'm going to come up with a nice bright idea for a new segment at this very moment, which I'm sure you'll agree is probably for the best. Predicted lineups first pass, I have done very, very quickly. Say there is trying to work out where the rotation gets unrotated again for the weekend and beyond. And so I also haven't fully read up on all the injuries and seen everything yet. So first pass, and that will continue to be tweaked right up until the deadline on Friday. So, going to leave things there. Nice quick one. As I said, not heavy on content, but hopefully we can be a bit more active, chatting in the comments, etc. I think going to be more helpful given the tight turnaround, and also trying to contend with certain players that you'll have, no doubt, with looming trips to the African Cup of Nations that you're trying to wonder whether or not to drop. Remember, if you're commenting or asking things like that, really, at a minimum, super useful to know your league size, because that will really dictate what you can do with those guys. So, if you have been listening, then make sure you are following on whichever podcast platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, then click the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. And as I said, comment anything below and I will get back to each and every one of you. Go and check out draftfc.co.uk if you haven't already. I'm not going to go through what we've got on there right now in the interest of time. Give us a follow on X at draft_FC. And until next time, stay sure.